There are 5 levels of skill in UI design, but if you want to get hired, you need to be at least on level 4. In this video, I'll show you a glassomorphic dark mode design with those 5 levels of skill explained. Here's a quick glimpse at level 5, something that is very likely to get you hired for a UI designer role. But we're gonna start our adventure at level 1. I'll show you my secret tricks, tips and techniques to help you evaluate which level you're on right now and how to progress to the next one. Okay, we're at level 1 and it's a mess. Let's start by looking at hierarchy of the image. The middle part actually looks like everything is blended together and it's really difficult to make out specific form elements and the description. It's just a chaotic mess. Then let's check out the colors. You should never use red, blue and green, especially that saturated, on one design. That's practically a recipe for disaster every single time. And then next to that we have a very subtle pastel button color, which makes it completely disappear because this color for the CTA is barely visible. And if the colors weren't horrible already, there are gradients here from red to blue, which is a horrible eyesore, and then a green gradient at the bottom. Now another thing here is that the shadow from the bottom is actually going towards the top. This is an unnatural position because all the natural shadows simply point down, not up. We have completely inconsistent icons here. We have an example of a filled, pretty simple shape, a colorful clip art, a thick, sharp outlines and a thin, rounded outlines. And even among a similar style, which is an outline, you see that one of the icons has a much thinner stroke than the other one, and it has rounded elements while the other one has sharp ones. So completely inconsistent and not matching. Now let's look at typography. Just because you have hundreds of fonts in your library doesn't mean you should use them all in one design. There are 11 different font sizes, styles and typefaces on just this one screen, and that creates immense confusion, and it's a really bad idea. Some elements are stretched or distorted or sticking out of their bounds, and there's no way to actually see on which of those carousel images of the product we are right now. There are also really inconsistent roundnesses of the corner. In some places it's like barely rounded, in some it's completely sharp, and then in others it's completely rounded. Our brain has to process all that, and it adds to the cognitive load. Spacing. Consistent and easy to follow spacing creates hierarchy and structure of the layout. But here we have so many different random spacing values, both horizontally and vertically, that it's impossible to follow, and our brain has to make a lot of effort to try to decipher what we're even looking at here. And then there's the small things, like misalignments of elements within other elements. You see that the 10 terabytes text is too low and a little bit too much to the left. The cyber steel is not really centered, and then add to cart and the icon are misaligned both horizontally and vertically within the button. And the last thing to check is readability and contrast. And as you can see, some of these elements fail even the very basic contrast checks, which means that people with some vision problems won't be able to see them at all. But even if you don't have vision problems, it's still an eyesore. Okay, now we're at level 2, and this one is actually very common among many junior designers. Looking at the hierarchy is definitely better, but there is still some chaos and confusion in the middle section. We don't have a color palette nightmare here anymore, but still there are too many strong colors in the design which take the attention away from the main CTA. A gradient here is completely unnecessary, but if you really want to go with it, a natural gradient has the darker color on the bottom, not at the top. This button also has an unnecessary glow kind of shadow, which is a shadow that is pretty light and colorful, and the direction of it still goes to the top, which is unnatural. Icons here are a little bit better. We only have one colorful clip art, which is probably somebody's artistic expression. and the rest of the icons is all outlines, but we still have different thickness levels of the strokes. Some of them also have sharp corners while others have them rounded. The typography is definitely better than in level 1, but we still have way too many font sizes, styles and families here, and the title is the same size as the description, which can be pretty confusing. And another thing that's pretty common is to have the same object, which in this case is a form label, storage and customize, be displayed with two completely different styles, and that adds to the confusion because this object is the same, so it should look the same. The back arrow icon is too big, the clip art icon is not aligned to it vertically, the little dots that signify a carousel all look the same, and then the cyber steel illustration element is too big in the box, and obviously also the button has completely misaligned text and icon. We still have too many different levels of roundness in the interface, 6 to be precise, and really you should keep an interface to just 2 or even 1 when possible. Spacing is definitely better here, but we still have completely random number values like 35 and 33 and then 42. I'll tell you a secret, for an interface to look great, consistent spacing that follows the same base grid number is really essential to get it right. There is also a very common form mistake here, where a label is actually closer to the field above it than it is to the field it belongs to. Customize is simply too high on the design, it should be lower to make it clear to the user that it belongs to the field below. There is also a wrong layer hierarchy for dark mode. Layers that are closer to the viewer should be lighter. If you're on this level and want to level up, check out my video courses and my YouTube playlist, cause you can easily go to a higher level with them. Okay, let's take a short break and tell me if you find levels 1 or 2 funny, like thinking, oh, that's really hilarious, I wouldn't really make mistakes like that. If that's the case, that's great, but these designs exist and they often even make their way into real coded products. So it's really important to be aware of some of those mistakes early on. Okay, but if you feel like you're on level 1 or level 2, don't worry, because you have plenty of space to grow, and now with these tips you should be able to identify the problems and fix them much faster. Now let's explore levels 3, 4 and 5. Welcome to level 3. Most designers out there, after they practice for a while, are on this level, and it's not bad, but it's not really enough. The interesting thing about this one is that the hierarchy is actually worse than on the level 2 design. The problem here is that some inconsistent spacing leads you to actually perceive the middle part as just one single group, not two individual groups, the title and description and the form. The colors are much better, the CTA is a little bit easier on the eyes, and you can see it compared to the color of the button from the previous level. It used to be 100% saturation, so very strong and in your face. This one has a saturation of 79, and this is a much better place to be. The button uses a solid bottom shadow of 2 points width, and it's darker than the elements, so everything is okay. Icons now look a lot better, but they are still slightly inconsistent. There are a couple of different thickness levels of the lines, and some of them still have rounded and some have sharp endings and corners. Finally, the title is bigger than the description, and that creates better hierarchy from the start. There is still too much variety in fonts though, too many sizes, too many thickness levels and too many different. That serif font in the title really doesn't match the rest of the interface, for example. Some other things to remember. keep your icons consistent. The back arrow is a lot smaller and differently positioned than the checkout cart, and that adds to the confusion as well. There is also very little difference between the selected dot in the carousel and the non-selected one, and obviously the text and label on the button is still completely misaligned, and that's a super common thing. Always check that. Speaking of roundness, one design, 6 separate roundness levels. That's really too much. The spacing is a lot better now, especially the left edge of the screen, which right now actually feels like everything is aligned to the same line, and that's a new thing for this level. The rest is still pretty random numbers like 35, 21 and then 8. You really need to follow a consistent specific grid here, not some random numbers. Okay, we need to stop in a minute and talk about it. The layers that are closer to you, the layers on top, cannot be darker than the layers at the bottom. This dark mode issue is actually very common. Many people make this mistake. When you're looking at your phone, you're likely looking at it at a 45-degree angle, looking down with the main light source coming from the top. That means that the shadows should be rendered directly towards the bottom and not to the sides, and definitely not to the top. But it also means that the elements that are closer to the light source, the virtual layers, should be lighter than the ones in the back. That's pretty simple, right? Welcome to level 4. Some designers that have finished my courses and ended up on this level got hired practically right away. It's not perfect yet, but it has that first impression that really matters when trying to get your first UI job. The hierarchy is clear. You can find out where the meta information ends and the form begins, and that makes processing the form a lot faster. While still pretty subtle, this color progression is still wrong here. The things closer to you should be lighter and not the other way around. There is a minimal inconsistency in icon line thickness, but it's barely visible. There are just 2 typefaces here, one for the title and one for everything else, with very consistent and small number of sizes and styles. It makes this whole screen a lot easier to read. The spacings are really good here. They all follow a consistent 8-point grid throughout, but there is one element where I think it could have been done better, and you can see that change on level 5. Welcome to level 5. If you're on this level, you probably are getting job offers from recruiters yourself without even reaching out to them. The hierarchy is clear and makes it a lot easier to scan the content. The colors are good and there is a proper dark mode hierarchy. All icons have consistent styles, sizes, stroke thicknesses, and endings and joints. We still only have 2 typefaces and 1 less font size in the mix. The spacing here also follows that same 8-point grid with extreme consistency all throughout, but the main difference is that we are using a 48 distance optically from the form to the button. You can also call that bottom 48 a double 24, and that's still fine. But that one spacing change makes it a lot easier to actually focus on the button without the previous form fields interfering visually. So that's the full breakdown, but if you're below level 4 right now, don't worry, just practice, practice, practice. And speaking of practice, we will be launching a 2.0 version of our platform that will have a completely free UI design daily challenge. That means that you'll be able to practice your UI design skills every single day with a new wireframe and a new challenge. Stay subscribed so you won't miss the announcement of when it launches, and we're really close to the launch, so it can be any day now. And before that happens, remember that you can greatly improve your skills by watching some of the playlists on this YouTube channel or simply getting some of my best-selling courses. Over 20,000 people are learning from my courses right now, and seeing how fast and how much they progress is simply mind-blowing. All links are in the description. And you know what? I need to tell you something. I don't know how to say it, but have a beautiful day.